Coming up today on Uncommon Sense, Eileen Douglass, the head of school for Chesterton Academy of the St. Croix Valley, joins us. We'll talk to her about leading at Chesterton Academy and why it's a great model for education. Stay tuned, that's coming up on Uncommon Sense. A very, very hearty welcome to all of you out there listening. This is Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of G.K. Chesterton. I am Albert Saenz, once again joined with my wonderful co-host, Grettelyn Darkey. Grettelyn, welcome once again.
Hi there, Albert. Great to be back.
So glad to have you. And as mentioned in the introduction, we have the pleasure of being joined by Eileen Douglass. Eileen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Grettelyn, for having me.
Well, we are always happy to talk to anyone involved at Chesterton Academy. But before we get too much into there, how about we give the audience a chance to learn a little bit more about you and your background. Can you share that with our audience?
I would be happy to. I actually went through Catholic grade schools and Catholic high schools and Catholic colleges. And I would say by the time I left high school that I wasn't firmly established in my faith. And I had the wonderful opportunity when I was in college to kind of get a peek at the riches of kind of the Catholic, the traditional Catholic philosophy and theology. And that was just such a wonderful opportunity for me that I wanted the same for my children. And actually, as I tried to find a good place to put them in education, I had a difficult time. And I was very happy to encounter the Chesterton schools and what they had to offer.
And so obviously, though, so you found them, but how did that end up leading you to actually become the head of school?
Well, as I worked with my children, it seemed that there was frequently, we had to split. Did we want a good Catholic education or did we want an academic education? It was hard to find the two that were married together. And you get to a place where you say, well, I can be part of the solution or I can complain. And so that's actually when I got into education. So I got into education when I was older because I really wanted, I guess, to grow kind of education because I knew there was great educational opportunities out there. And that's my launching point into education itself.
Wow. So were you part of the founding of the school?
No, I was not. So actually, I am new to this position this year. And it was... I began as a literature teacher, actually, and kind of worked my way through some of the teaching years and then into administration. And when I encountered the opening at this position, I was excited about that because I felt it was a very good match for what I found to be a wonderful education and was passionate about. And I've been here since this past July.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what is it that you like the most about the Chesterton Academy format?
I think, what I find phenomenal about the Chesterton Academy format is actually its smallness. I think in a world where we really praise big, right? We kind of, I think in a sense, praise mass production over quality production. I think that's seeped into our education to a large extent. And the Socratic Seminar, which is a large part of Chesterton Academy, enables individual students to ponder what they're learning, to ask the questions that they need to ask, and to really come to see what they're learning in many different facets. There's an ease in just telling students what to learn and expect to see it back on the test, but that way in which it's a question and answer format where they have that opportunity to ask the questions that they need to ask. I don't necessarily know, even as an instructor, all the questions that are plaguing my students. So to give them that wide open opportunity to do that is a great gift. It's a gift in the sense that they will know it in a more profound way. Additionally, it's a gift in the sense that they will hold on to it in a much longer way.
Beautiful.
To sort of spring off of that statement and that question, right? So you explained to us why you like the format of Chesterton Academy. Now, Chesterton Academy, for those who may not know, who are listening, is aimed at sort of the high school aged bracket. This isn't necessarily a middle school or even a primary sort of educational model. This is a model for those who, I guess we would say, 14 to 18, somewhere in there. But my question is, for that age range, why do you feel that Chesterton Academy is good for high school, if that makes sense? So you told me why you like the academy, but why is this important for high schoolers to have this experience?
I think it's exceptionally important for high schoolers to have this experience because I think going back maybe to a contrast of the way in which things are frequently done is that they're expected to learn things as presented. And when they're just expected to learn things because I told you so, in a sense, that is a dangerous way, I guess, I think, to learn. Aristotle talks about the difference, I think, between knowledge, true knowledge, and right opinion, where you know one thing from the principles and the other thing you just happen to know something that is right. And so I think a great example would be when we talk about something like the Pythagorean theorem. I think a lot of times the way in which that is presented is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And if you ask students, even that are coming into our school who have had geometry before, they will answer that correctly. But when asked what that actually means, it's interesting in that they just say, well, fundamentally you take a number and you multiply it by itself, and you take another number and you multiply it by itself on the two legs of the triangle, and it equals the hypotenuse when you multiply it by itself. But when they see in turn that actually what we're talking about is a square, if we draw a square on one leg of the triangle and another leg of the triangle, and we figure out that area, it is equal to the area on the hypotenuse. And you do that work for them. So they see that actually coming into being. They know that in a completely different way than they know just a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that kind of knowledge, in a sense, can't be taken from them because they didn't take it on the assurance of someone else. They know it because it's true from its principles. And we need students who know material like that because when we look out into the culture, I think there are a lot of winds that blow and can literally shake knowledge that isn't firmly established in their minds, truths that aren't firmly established in their minds, and we need them to have that knowledge firmly. So I think it's exceptionally important at the high school level as they prepare to go out to know things in a certain, or at least a more certain sort of way.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that they have that foundation for college or for life because I think a lot of people get out to college and that's their first opportunity to ask any questions. So it's sort of, it gives them a much safer space to ask those questions and to receive actual truth in the Chesterton Academy setting.
Well, and I think that actually that sort of learning properly reflects the dignity of the human person. If we say that the human person and the human mind has a certain sort of dignity, we should treat it in accordance with its nature. And I don't think the nature of the human mind is just, to have things kind of rammed into it, if you will, but rather explore it. I love the quote. I've seen it attributed to both Socrates and Plato, but that notion where, education should be more like the enkindling of a flame than the filling of a vessel, right? Where you're trying to light something that has it's animated and it consumes, right? Rather than just using the student as something that's passive and stationary and filling it up with whatever we choose to fill it up with.
Yeah, and just sort of ticking the box, which is sort of the test model too. You put it in, it comes back out, it's the right answer, you did it right. But does it really stick with them? Is it really benefiting them and helping them to be learners more than anything else? Because that's hopefully what we're trying to do.
Right. I think the concept of being learners and thinkers, right? Being able to use your mind, not just sort of, like Grettelyn said, it comes in and goes out. Like, well, what happens in between? And I think that's what Chesterton Academy does really great, is helping these young minds to actually learn how to use their brains properly and not just repeat something that they memorized, but to actually say, I understand, and this is why it is the answer.
Absolutely. I think it's important for those young people to feel free to question, for instance, when we give them something, is that absolutely true? Is it true in a qualified sense? To give them the ability to explore those limitations is something that, we hope that they do when they go out in the world and are confronted with other ideas. So and also the unity of the way in which things are done kind of in that chronological order, they will retain things better if they see it from multiple perspectives. So when they have, for instance, they're seeing the ancient world from a historical point of view, from a philosophical point of view, from a mathematical point of view, it just really is able to be retained in a different way than I know this formula. And I can't remember exactly, where the squares go or something like that. It's very different.
Yeah, it's a much more three-dimensional picture of the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're in a particular position, luckily, because some of the other leaders, some of the other Chesterton Academies, they have come in, straight as a headmaster or a head of school, and that's been their path. You started as an educator and sort of came up now into your position. So you've really been able to sort of see the development of these students in a particular way, like one sort of being really in the classroom. And you may still be teaching. I understand a lot of the leaders in the schools, the heads of school, the headmasters actually teach also, and you may do that. So, but to be strictly an educator, to now come through for your amount of time, now to be leading, what kind of changes have you witnessed in the students? Those who've come in as freshmen, those who graduate as seniors. What's it like from your perspective, watching those students go through the years, coming in one way and potentially leaving a different way?
I think there are a number of differences, one of which in some sense we've touched on already, but it's that looking at information in a sense, not just to consume, but to consider, right? So when something is put up, rather than, okay, I need to write it down, I need to know it, I need to be ready to be tested on it, there's a pause, right? A looking at it. What does this mean? Where does it fit? What are its boundaries? Some of those questions, which I think is one of the things that we really attempt to instill in our students, in the sense that we're trying to teach them how to think, not just what to think. Additionally, even with the presence of fine arts in our curriculum, the confidence of the students, right, between the Socratic seminar where they're speaking, and actually even going back to that notion of having a smaller school where the classes are like cohorts where they're moving together, they're moving forward together, and they kind of become a group, if you will, and they ponder things. It's not just my pondering, but it's a pondering of the class as a whole. And they learn to use the talents and skills of each other, not just their own, in order to really explore topics, which is wonderful. And that brings a confidence, the fine arts, especially something like drama, where they're expected to get up in front of large audiences, and it doesn't matter in a sense, if you're quiet or if you're animated or whatever your gifts may be, that you will perform in front of audiences. And this is I think, a great gift. I think the longer that we're afraid to get up in front of people, the harder in a sense it is. And so that's just part of what they do, it is not, it's not at all a big ask to have these students stand up and say, in a way which has been refined in the classroom, right? Not in I don't think, an arrogant way, but rather in a way that's been refined in a constant course of conversation over the 4 years, what they say, what their questions are, what their concerns are. And I think that's an amazing skill to have, that also.
Yeah, I've met a couple of graduates from Chesterton Academies. It's always incredibly, stunningly impressive how well they just get up and speak, and their ideas are extremely organized, more than mine, I feel like. And I'm 35 and they're just graduated, but it's just clear that there's been a foundation of logical thinking, coupled with a foundation of practice, like you say, to get up and to be able to be in front of people, that really is kind of preparing them to be leaders in their communities as well. That's wonderful. So what? Just kind of curious. I know you're new to it, but like, what's one of your favorite things about being a headmaster now, especially as opposed to, you used to be a teacher? What do you like better, worse? What's the comparison?
Well, let's see. I would say that I enjoy both very much, and I still do teach here, and I'm glad to be able to continue to do that. But as headmaster, what's wonderful is to see the whole working together and try to work to assure that all the various pieces have what they need, whether it be the curriculum or the student life, or extracurricular opportunities, that again, going back to the fact that we're small enough to be able to perceive what individuals need and work hard to provide that to the students. And so that actually is wonderful. And to work with wonderful families and wonderful students, and not necessarily be limited in my knowledge of folks, right, to just my classes, but rather an opportunity to really interact with the whole, whether it be the board of directors or the families and all the faculty members and the students. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
Wonderful, amazing.
It must be such a gift, really. I think you see in most other educational institutions, public school, most likely, and potentially a lot of other private school settings, the leader of the school, the principal of the school, is just that. They're just a principal, and they do their job. But you, much like a lot of the other Chesterton Academy leaders and headmasters and heads of school, you get to teach still. Like, you actually get to sit in there with the students and be a part of their educational formation. You're not just sort of leading from your office, but you actually get to still sit there with them. And that must be such a wonderful part of your day, to still be there teaching the students.
Absolutely. I think going back to that notion of what makes it different, right? It's that it's not this, I guess, sort of mass production, if you will, but I have the opportunity to interact with those students. And education is about communication. And communication, you have to know what is being said, kind of who's saying it, and the person to whom you're speaking. And I think it's important actually for heads of school, of any sort of school, to be interacting at that level with the students, so they have a good understanding of where students are at. In previous situations, I've taught the same class 4 times a day, and each class, it would be a different experience. And so that's magnified, right, over the course of years or grades and these sorts of things. So I think having an opportunity for a head of school to have the opportunity to actually teach is a wonderful and beautiful thing, to keep those more intimate relationships with the students and your fingers really on the pulse of the school and what's going on with those young people.
Yeah, it probably keeps you just so connected in a way that, unfortunately, I think, like Albert said, some other principals or heads of school might not be, because they're just very focused on administration, sort of exclusively.
And additionally, there's to be working with the curriculum itself is very helpful in that if there seems to be, concerns or successes, that you're part of that. And I think it's that piece also is just more readily apparent when you're actually doing that thing. So it is, I think, a wonderful, wonderful opportunity.
Very holistic.
Yes, absolutely.
Eileen, can you share some of the sort of stats of your particular Chesterton Academy? Like what are the numbers like as a whole on the grade levels? Are you seeing increased enrollment year to year? What's that looking like there?
So we have a little bit of a different position that we split off from the Hopkins campus. And so our growth, if you look at the trajectory of our growth, is that it gets we kind of go down to the freshman and sophomore classes. Those are our larger classes, and that's exactly what we want to see. We want to grow, not huge, just like we were speaking about before, but rather we want to get to that size, that comfortable size where we have 20, 22 people in a classroom. And so we started the year at 15, I believe, 14, I think, for the sophomores, and 15 for the freshmen. And so that's certainly, we're moving in the right direction. And those are increases from the classes that had come before it. And so we're looking forward to a good next couple years. We've had a lot of interest. We had actually a game night for prospective students here just last week. And between some of the people there were certainly our students, but we had 49 people come and have a wonderful evening, kind of interacting with our current students and parents. And it was a great evening.
Wonderful.
Is it been your experience, Eileen, that the parents that you get to talk to have sort of given you sort of really sort of phenomenal feedback on like, oh, I love Chesterton Academy. I love that my student is here, that my son and my daughter, or my son or my daughter, like they come home and they're great and they're telling me fantastic things that I didn't even know about. Do you get that kind of feedback from the parents?
I think that's one, again, going back to kind of our size, it's great, the level of feedback and also the quality of feedback. We've heard many wonderful things, and sometimes we've heard things that we need to hear, right? And we need to make some adjustments. And I think it's really important to have that level of trust and interaction so that we can make our school better. So there has been, we were recently ranked as one of the CLT nationally ranked schools, and we're real proud of that. And I think that's the type of thing that parents love to see, and they love to hear about and know that their students are getting a great education, because sometimes I do think when they hear that they're talking a lot in class, right, there might be, is there forward motion, right? But to see this great ability to think and to speak and to be present in the young people today, especially by contrast sometimes, we've heard many, many, many positive things from the parents in regards to a number of those things.
That's great. That's just really great, because there's plenty of news about school systems and school districts where parents are really not happy about what's happening. So it must be such a joy to be able to get such good feedback from parents and knowing that you are doing something that is not status quo and that is really, like, truly impacting the lives of young people.
We had the Stillwater Chamber of Commerce, we're out here, of course, in Stillwater, Minnesota, come. They had a leadership cohort on education come, and I understood that they would be speaking to me, and so I had prepared a few comments, and we spoke, and we talked about some of these same things where we're working to prepare these students in a way in which they can be leaders and they can stand up, and that they're respecting the dignity of themselves and of others, and in that way, right, that it's kind of growing a strong community. And it was a very nice conversation. And after we had that conversation, they asked if they could speak with some of our students. And so on the fly, I had gone and asked 3 students if they'd be willing to talk to them. And they did. And after the students, I stayed out of the room. So, they had a conversation with them. But when I went back in and the students had left, they said, I saw what you were talking about. That's what their comment was, right? Just of the ease with which our students and the comfort with which our students can come before people and speak to people and communicate well. So that was wonderful.
Excellent. Well, just to sort of wrap things up, and you've kind of answered this, but in a very short way, like what would be your sort of elevator pitch for parents to send their kids to the school?
So sometimes I have a hard time with the elevator pitch because there's so many wonderful things.
Yes.
But, and it depends on where the person is coming from. But one thing that I like to draw people's attention to is actually, a lot of education is sort of scattershot, and to take education and to organize it in a particular way and to deliver it in a way which is proportionate to the dignity of the student and the dignity of the material that they're learning, really gives those students the ability to hang on to that information in a completely different sort of way, and to organize it all around Christ, right, and his church is something which doesn't limit. I think a lot of people out in the world make folks want to think that that's limiting. That's not limiting at all, right? That's like opening the window where things become more ordered and more able to be consumed in a certain way because of the proper alignment of all the pieces. Those are some of the pieces that I like to hit on when I'm talking to parents or to an elevator speech is what we do is different. It's different in quantity, if it's different in quality, it's different in the way in which we do it, all these things.
And different in this case is very good.
I think so. Absolutely.
Well, if you're talking to a parent who's dissatisfied with the mainstream system, I think different would sound good, even if you just said different. So
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Uncommon Sense. We have had the joy in this episode of talking with Eileen Douglass. Again, she is the head of school for Chesterton Academy of the St. Croix Valley. If you'd like to learn more about the Chesterton Schools Network, you can go over to chestertonschoolsnetwork.org. Lots of good information. They have a good map representative of the growing number of Chesterton Academies across not just the country, but the world, actually. So if you're interested, please go to that URL. I'll put that in the description, as well as a link to the school that Eileen is at, in case you happen to be in that area of Minnesota. Eileen, thanks so much for being with us. Really great to hear from you, and so glad to hear that more good things continue to happen at Chesterton Academies.
Thank you, Albert, for having me. Thank you, Grettelyn.
And Grettelyn, as always, thank you so much. I love having you on board with us, and you are you're a good companion to have on these journeys. So thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Albert. It's been great fun as always.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to remind you that we are kind of all over the place. So as far as social media, so please subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that notification button, add us to your favorite podcast app, leave us a review or a comment. We want this show to continue to grow, and we need your help to do it. Please come back again for another episode. Come back for more Uncommon Sense. And remember, Chesterton is always better with friends. Talk to you next time.